too, is history now. Now is the final victory inscribed and recorded in the pages of time. But in millions of hearts, the joy is strained. These were our brothers, our husbands, our sons. These were the soldiers who fought fascism to the death. And these were just people who happened to be in the path of total war. A war that began with the shelling of Shanghai and the bombing of Barcelona, that ended with the shambles of Berlin and the wasteland of Nagasaki. They too died fighting fascism. Fascism was the world's most expensive sin. And these were homes. Homes, streets, neighborhoods. Some were old, some new, some fashionable, some sordid. Doesn't make much difference now. And this was a city. An empty shell? Not quite. There are people left in all the ruined cities of the world, people who are said to be alive. Two of the four horsemen of the apocalypse, ruthless power and war, passed over them, and still they live. As in a nightmare, they shift between the burdens of death and the burdens of life, and cannot tell which are heavier. Of human endurance? No. For a third horseman rides through the twisted town on the black horse of famine. And still another comes, the fourth, the pale horseman. In biblical days, his name was pestilence. His modern name is epidemic disease. His shadow is in the sewer waters of 1,000 towns. These people slake their thirst with typhoid fever and dysentery, with infectious jaundice, and possibly with infantile paralysis. They don't know they're helping the pale horseman on his way, while for them there is no help. To fight disease, you need hospitals and medical supplies, doctors and nurses, clean sheets and disinfectants. Red Crosses made easy targets. The people of thousands of towns had no place to die in, let alone to get well in. A wave of tuberculosis which spread over Europe with the German armies could not be stopped without food, shelter, and sanitation. This is shelter for millions of Europeans. And this is where they prepare their scraps of food. When millions have been living in filth, cooking in filth, eating in filth, sickness must be taken for granted. But who can take such scenes for granted? Luftwaffe first rose to carry death to unarmed civilians, thousands of trapped Europeans hurried from their threatened homes to seek safety elsewhere. As a glacier pushes along a mass of tumbling rock, so the Blitz stirred up a great horde of refugees. Holland, from Luxembourg, from Belgium, from France. Soon a continent was running for dear life. No, more than a continent, for a globe was on fire. At the other end of the axis, the people of China had taken to the roads on their bare feet. They moved a country out of the reach of their greedy enemies with their bare hands. In Asia alone, the refugees numbered more than 100 million. But it wasn't Asia alone, for soon the Russians were pushed from their homeland. More uprooted millions suffered the hardships of the road. Exposure, fatigue, hunger, neglected wounds, neglected illness, the rotting bodies of the unburied dead. Contaminated food, polluted water, the effects of unceasing terror on the minds of men, women, and children. The lack of sanitation, the living conditions that invited the spread of contagious disease. This is the birthplace of epidemics. This is where the Pale Horseman started on his deadly ride. But his progress is not unnoticed. Far away in Washington, capital of the United States, where a joint high command worked on the military strategy of the war, another international group of experts assembles information regarding the spread of epidemics. Epidemiologists, they're called, a sort of G2 in the war against disease. Because they know how epidemics travel, they can predict cholera along the Yangtze next month from cases reported in Chongqing last week. Their statistics are kept up to date by a vast international organization. Typhus in Europe. They've even made a picture of its movement based on figures that were cabled from the underground. From the bestial filth of German concentration camps, the disease spread along the highways and railroad lines of France. How? Carried by fathers and brothers and husbands, prisoners of war returning to their loved ones with joy in their hearts and with a deadly organism in their bodies. In a great gesture of kindness, the Nazis let these men return to their wives and children. The poor Frenchmen rejoiced in their good fortune, for the typhus microbe is invisible. Soon the world would be on its way back home, on a road that seems so short because the goal is so real. But maybe your home isn't there anymore. Better hurry. Better hurry. Would the Pale Horseman ride on all these roads? Would he follow the returning refugees? Would he shadow the homeward migration of 200 million displaced persons? Would they escape the aftermath of all great wars, from the Crusades through World War I, the pestilence that made battle casualties seem trivial? This time, epidemics could cross rivers and mountain ranges. They could fly from one hemisphere to another. Multitudes have been exposed to malaria, typhus, tuberculosis, and a score of other infectious diseases. What could prevent the Pale Horseman from riding into every village, town, and city in the world?